So let's start with epithelia. What is epithelia? So epithelial cells, they're basically, when you think epithelia, the key word I want you to think about is a layer. So epithelial cells, they form layer or layers of cells. So here we see a cross section of this right here. So we have all these epithelial cells, but notice that they kind of are on this one, they're kind of anchored toward this surface we call a basal surface. And this apical surface, this is kind of like the outer area of these cells. So one thing you need to know, like just like how we have superior and inferior and cranial and caudal in our overall gross anatomy of our body, epithelial cells also have their microanatomy. So we have these two directions, apical and basal, and they're almost like superficial and deep. So apical is toward the side that's free and not going towards some space. It can actually be toward the environment. It can be toward the inner environment. It could be toward the inside of a blood vessel. So apical is like the top of a cell. So this is the apical surface over here. And basal surface. So notice that this basal surface is attached to a basement membrane. So this kind of forms like a foundation of a sheet of these epithelial cells. So again, when you think epithelial, you think layers, like a sheet of something. So the sheet that actually, this sheet of cells is anchored to this basement membrane. So the part that touches this basement membrane, that's the basal surface. Or just like the base of any building, it's the bottom part of a building, right? So that's what we mean by basal. Okay, so then we have this basement membrane. So when you have an epithelial layer, you have all these cells, and they're arranged so that they're kind of like forming the sheet of cells. They're all attached to this basement membrane. So again, you can have multiple of these cells as long as they're attached to that membrane, and it's a epithelium. Okay, but the thing is that the cool thing about epithelial cells, a lot of your epithelial cells, well, where do you find them? You can find them like on the inside of your GI tract. So your gastrointestinal tract runs from the mouth all the way to the rectum and anus, and you have all these cells, and they line this, but they're also peel off and slough off as well. And same with your skin over here. Like your skin is also a layer of epithelia. So as you bump through things, or if you like to use those like really scrubby towels, or those like, wasn't those? I know they have those Japanese or Korean towels that are really rough. Like if people want to exfoliate, they can do that as well. So you're always losing epithelial cells. The great thing about epithelial cells is not only do they form sheets, they tend to regenerate because they're often exposed to the environment. So you're losing cells, but they're also able to regenerate and also like fill up the gaps where some of these cells died and sloughed off. Okay. All right. So think about these cells. Like when these cells get sloughed off, well, if you ever had peeling skin, you notice that they come off in flakes instead of just coming off in individual cells. So why did they come off as flakes? Like if you have a flake of skin, it's not just one cell, it's actually a whole sheet of cells that's coming off. So again, epithelia are like layers and sheets. And what we have here is that cell junctions. Now, do I want you to know all of these specific parts of these junctions? Like, do I want you to know cadherin, keratins, and all these actins and other filaments? I think that's more of an advanced A&P level question, but you should know that you have all these things that join cells with the epithelia. So the thing about epithelial cells, they're not just stuck into somewhere, they're not just stuck on this basement membrane, and that's the only point of attachment. They actually form this network where they're all kind of connected to each other. Now I think this is a little more, this is the Martini version of the image, and it's also on the slides. But what we have here is like, okay, you have these hemidesmosomes that help to attach these epithelial cells to the basement membrane, but you also have these connections that attach these different cells to each other. And preview, especially when we get to neurons and muscles later on in this semester and next semester, these gap junctions are pretty darn important, because what they do is not only do they connect cells, they actually connect the cytoplasm between neighboring cells. So that's what's really cool. And tight junctions. So tight junctions are also, I like to talk about them as well, because the thing is that with these gaps between the cells, they allow things to go between them. But these tight junctions, I like to think of them like the seal on a Ziploc bag. Like you have these double seals, and they prevent water from leaking out if you have liquid in that bag. Same with these tight junctions. They're trying to prevent molecules, even water, from going between them as well.